Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker and I'm your host. And I am so excited today to talk to Claire Chandler. And we're going to talk about the chaos that's going on in our system. So the culture of chaos in our lives and in our businesses. And that's pretty exciting. So let me tell you a little bit about Claire. She's president and founder of Talent Boost. And she specializes in aligning HR business leaders so that they can deliver strategic outcomes, both today and in the future. And she's got over 25 years of experience in people leadership, human resources, and business ownership to help leadership teams work together more effectively in less time with less cultural resistance so that they can accelerate their business growth. And there's lots of more great stuff about her, but we're gonna get right to it. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Penny. How are you?
I am fantastic. I like that we're going to talk about the chaos. So, you chose that word, right? So, and I'm totally down with it. Tell me, what is chaos to you? Like, what is?
Yeah. So, and this started when right before we started recording the episode, when I said, you said kind of what's your deal, what's your focus, what's your area, and I said culture building, and then I said specifically, there is this sort of culture of chaos. And so what does that mean, right? Because I certainly am not a proponent of creating or nurturing or continuing the culture of chaos. But I do find as an executive leadership advisor, when I come into organizations, that is often what we are facing, right? Is this sort of this quest to build a culture that can actually support sustainable growth and engagement and retention of talent and all of that sort of thing. But in fact, what they are struggling with is chaos. And that takes on many forms, right? There is this sense of overwhelm, of sheer volume and pace of work, unlike anything we have seen before, that is really sort of getting in the way of clarity and of forward action and of higher level thought. And that starts at the top of an organization. And of course, it then infects every corner of an organization if that chaos continues. So yeah, I'm really interested to unpack this a little bit with you and see if we can't solve that a little bit for folks.
And don't you think we're creating a little bit of our own chaos?
100%.
I mean, and maybe I'm going to go into a tangent here or there, but like if I just think about like the communication, right? And communication can be chaos, right? So keeping things simple. And what's happened, I think, in the culture and the changes that were made in communication when the pandemic came through, is we thought we were improving communication, but we only scattered it even further. I think we created more chaos because now we've got more platforms to communicate over, and it makes it very unclear as to, well, should I be on this platform or that platform? And so I think just you talked about it from a capacity perspective, right? And so much coming at us, I think that we don't slow down to really think things through. And so it just gets more chaotic. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think just like the technology that was introduced many years ago now, where we all have, back in my corporate days, it was a BlackBerry, right? But we've got phones, we've got portable devices that enable us to stay connected, to email, to text, to chat apps, all these sorts of things under the guise of convenience and expediency. And I think, to your point, what it has created instead is this notion that we are always on, we are always accessible, we are always working, and we are always connected. And I think that's sort of the big lie of technology, right? We sort of have deluded ourselves, and I'm very sensitive to what you said about, we kind of bring this chaos on ourselves. We glom onto technology and we accumulate apps and we accumulate, other forms of staying connected under the guise that we are going to be more productive, more efficient in our work. Mm-hmm. And I think the opposite is true. I think what that has created is this overload, is this sense that I can never fully step away from my role professionally. And so I think you're right to call that out, because I think that is one of the ways that we are bringing chaos onto ourselves.
You know, what it made me think, use the word, you said diluted, right? So, and to me, I was thinking, you know, that's exactly what all these apps and all these platforms and, you know, because there's the apps and things that people use outside of work or to make themselves more productive. And then there's the ones that are dictated by work that you're to use. And it made me think of, you know, diluting attention, right? Is that each of those little apps and platforms that we have to be present to at some time during the day, they sap up just that little bit of energy. And then little by little, right? It saps up this energy and this energy and this energy. And then all of a sudden you're drained because you're pulled in so many different directions. So I guess what I'd like to say is, so, you know, this is one of your areas of specialty, is to deal with chaos theory, right? And help people to build truly productive cultures. So I think everybody gets the problem. Let's talk about what are some of the solutions. What have you seen really works against our better judgment to add another tool or another platform?
Yeah, I love that. And this is where some of what we do automatically is so working against us, right? And so it's going to be counterintuitive to say, turn off things and say no to more things. But let me pick on email as an example. I am sure, are all guilty of this, of having email open in the background while we are working. And what happens is it's not just email anymore. If it's a Microsoft platform, there's also Teams. If it's Google, then there's chat. We've got Slack channels, we've got Telegram, we've got all these sorts of things that even if we say we have closed them or muted them, they pop up in our field of vision. And that is one of the great myths as well, is that email is just something we look quickly at, we knock a couple of responses out, and we go back to work. And I have found that every time you turn your attention from whatever it is that you are productively attempting to work on, and you go to check your email, I don't care how long or short the email is or how long or short your response is, that's instantly a 10-minute disruption to what you were doing, instantly. And so, part of it, I do a lot of work with leadership teams, right? So now that we are sort of over the hump of the pandemic, we are back in person together, which I love because I feed off of the energy of the people in the room.
Yeah, me too.
And so like I'll meet with teams of leaders, senior level leaders, and they've already kind of walked into the room with a little bit of not suspicion, but reservation that the sacrifice of a day or a half day or several hours away from the firefighting is going to be worth it. And so I come back to kind of answer the question, you just posed, which is how do we get back control over this chaos? And I think this is where the counterintuitiveness comes in. We have to slow down in order to speed up. We have to distance ourselves from the day-to-day in order to see it from a higher perspective and to get our focus back.
I'm all about that. I'm the focusologist here.
Of course you are, and I knew you were gonna love that. But but company after company and team after team and leader after leader, I am surrounded by people who are self-professed problem solvers, and it's wonderful that we're problem solvers. And I think to your point of we live in a world of chaos. We live in a world where the speed and the volume and the pace of work is unprecedented. But I always have to stop these leaders and say, there's a difference between being problem solvers and solving the right problems.
I say the same thing. We're solving the wrong problems. Yeah.
Well, and we're just
thing.
solving everything.
Right.
And we feel productive that way. But in reality, we're not. In reality, we are losing ground because we are playing whack-a-mole versus taking that strategic step back or up to say, what are the right problems to solve? Which ones are going to move the needle and which ones are just noise that are contributing to this chaos?
Right. We're just solving whatever comes up and allowing that to be what do you call it? The determiner of where our time should be spent. And that is the wrong criteria just because it showed up.
Well, and it rocks us back on our heels, especially as leaders, right? Because it forces us into a reactive mode. Same
Yeah.
as just going automatically to, when you start your day, opening your email and seeing what's waiting for you. That is a reactive mode. And especially as leaders, let alone individual contributors, because everybody's guilty of this. Don't start your day by opening email and seeing what the day is going to unfold for you. You've got to take back control of how you're going to frame your day, how you're going to lead your day, and how you're going to end your day. And that is not going to be accomplished if the first place you go is to open your email.
Yep, absolutely. Well, like you said, I say the same thing. So we're like two peas in a pod here. That's what we're doing. We check it in the first thing in the morning, and immediately we're in reactive mode, following up on what other people's priorities are instead of focusing on our own.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
For those of you who are listening, if you're checking your email first thing in the morning, stop. Just give yourself the ability to know what's most important and do that thing first. And then you can get to the other things that are more on the reactive list.
And it's definitely a muscle you have to build up, right? Because, and I'm sure you and your audience are going to relate to this as well. I used to be incredibly guilty of my waking up in the morning, the alarm goes off, my second eye isn't even open yet, and I'm rolling over to pick up my phone because it's right on the charger, right on my nightstand, and opening up email. And so honestly, that's the worst thing you can do, because you're not even out of bed yet. You're not even sitting in front of your computer, and you're already giving over control of your day. And so we do have to be much more disciplined in when and how we open email, and don't open it from a standpoint of, let me give over control to what email is going to dictate is going to be my priority today, my schedule today, or my mood today. Let me really reframe my day and kind of lean in, from a far more intentional, if not strategic perspective.
Absolutely. So trying to think, there's so much that we could talk about, right? So tell me, what do you think when you're talking about, culture, right? We've been talking a lot about like an individual, right? Individual checking their emails and whatnot. What are things that an organization can do and take responsibility for to bring that chaos, to help the employees? Because what I've found is, we just aren't good at setting our own boundaries, right? And so I think there's like a two-part, right? There's our part, but what could the company do? And what are you seeing, companies do that are really working, that's helping people in this process?
Yeah. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the consultant answer first, which is,
It depends.
Well, yeah. So there's one, it depends. And two, there's no like one solution, right? There's no one single answer. However, having said that, what's been interesting is, I think organizationally, there's sort of this sandwich layer of leadership, right? So you've got the executive leadership team, then you've got kind of your senior level leaders, then you've got, depending on the size and complexity of the organization, you've got some other layers of leaders to managers to supervisors before you get to the boots on the ground who are actually trying to execute the strategy. And I think there is this sort of disconnect between what the executive leadership team sees and understands and believes, they have to kind of pull their organization toward as far as a strategic direction and a longer term view. And then how do those middle layers, especially toward the top of leadership, translate that into action and keep their teams focused. So I do a lot of work with leadership teams. And one of the big, I would say, complaints is the lack of transparency or perceived lack of transparency in communication from the highest levels of leadership. And the more I've been unpacking that, it's been really interesting, because I think people misunderstand the difference between strategy and tactics. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people in the workforce, even leaders, will say, well, the executives are changing their mind a lot and they're changing their strategic direction. But in reality, that's not what's happening. What's happening is they are making course corrections on the tactical direction and the tactical execution and the tactical translation of how do we get from here to that, to that strategic fulfillment. And I think it's really incumbent upon the leaders in between to kind of filter where they need to get to into tactical direction and clear expectations of their people, but also then feed that back up to the executive team to say, here's the perception, here's what I need to really advocate for my team and to keep them focused on the right things, because otherwise that's where chaos builds again, right? There's sort of that saying of SHIT rolls downhill, right? There's all this other stuff. And so it does snowball. The lower you are in the hierarchy, the more you tend to get inundated with the tactical without a perceived purpose. And when those two things are so disconnected, it's why there's overwhelm, it's why there's disengagement, and it's why you're seeing a lot of really good performers leaving their organizations.
Well, and I think it keeps people from being creative as well and pivoting on their own. Because, if they're just giving, this is the tactic, this is what you're going to be doing, but you don't know why you're doing it. And, I find myself, I'm very good at executing something tactically, but I'm even better when I know the why, because maybe I could do it even better because I understand the bigger picture. And I think you're right, is traditionally that the way that companies were run were very segmented, that, the leaders, they were the strategic people, and we don't need to share that with anyone else. So they would just give out little pieces of information of what people need. And that might have worked for a period of time for the way that society was at that time and the type of workers, right? And people didn't jump to new jobs so easily. So even if you didn't manage them well, they stayed, right? But today, it's a free market, especially if you don't even have to live in the area that your company is. You have a lot more options, and people don't stay around for bad leadership or lack of communication or autonomy and things like that. So I do think there's something very important to that leaders need to think about. Are there ways, like, what's a little bit of the how, and then we'll wrap up our session. What are some ways that executives can make sure that the whisper down the lane, that the strategy is getting clearly down to the bottom level, and so that they're able to connect the dots to what they're doing and how that affects the bigger picture, but also if they were to do something differently, how that would affect the bigger picture?
Yeah, so I think here is where it does get much simpler. There's one word that sort of jumps out at me, and that's empowerment. And what I mean by that is, I was talking to a CEO the other day, and I was giving him a little bit of this feedback of, hey, listen, I've been meeting with your leadership teams, and some of them are sort of, saying they don't fully understand why there were all these changes in strategic direction. And they're, what they're really talking about is the tactical side, but they don't all understand the strategy. And the first thing he said was, how can they not understand where we are going strategically? Every time I'm out there talking to employees, I'm talking about the strategy. What about that are they not understanding? And I think the sort of light bulb moment we got to through that conversation was, it's not that they don't understand the strategy per se, it's that they feel like they're still waiting for your permission to go out and make some decisions at a more localized level, to prioritize work, to filter out noise, and to get things done through the combined talents of their people. And all of that I kind of sum up as that word empowerment. I think there is, you start to get into this whole notion of you've got to give your people permission, and that feels a little bit squishy, and people kind of back away from that. But in essence, that's what we're saying. You need to empower your teams, especially those leadership layers in the middle, and remind them that they cannot continue to wait for the executive team to make things more clear for them on a tactical level. If they are not clear, they need to ask. And once they are clear, they need to act.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that people don't ask enough questions. Like, if you don't understand, why would you just sit there? Like, I've never understood that. I'm always someone who's like, hold on a second. Can I verify that I understood what that is? And I'm going to repeat that back to you so that I'm 100% sure I understand what we're working towards. Like, I'm always the person asking a question, making sure that there's clarity. And I don't understand why people don't ask. And they, whether they're afraid that they'll look stupid or whatever it is, it's just to reiterate your point, is it's so important to ask so you don't waste time solving the wrong problems or all working on different problems, right?
Well, and that's the other piece that contributes to chaos, right? Which is why getting together with teams is so important, because and I'll try to compress the soapbox moment here, but what drives me crazy is when executive leaders come to me and say, my leadership teams are not collaborating effectively. And I always say to them, the biggest reason why is because you are incentivizing them to achieve objectives and targets and outcomes within their vertical. So given the choice, I'm sure they want to collaborate more effectively across the horizontal, but if you're incentivizing and motivating them financially and advancement wise and recognition wise to achieve vertical outcomes, no wonder there's a disconnect there as well.
Right. Absolutely. So just to kind of summarize some of the things that we talked about, ways that organizations themselves, so senior leadership, can help to keep the chaos at bay, is to make sure that they are clearly communicating their strategy and giving autonomy, like you said, empowering the people below to make decisions. And I like what you said about incentivizing people to work more together and to be checking in that they are solving the same problem. So you said, so there's that transparency, there's incentive. Is there anything else that I missed in that conversation to highlight?
I think kind of the takeaway, especially that message to the executive team, is this notion of framing up to free up. And what I mean by that is they need to be really mindful, really intentional, very clear on how they frame up the strategy, and then free up their leaders right on down the hierarchy to go out and achieve that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel you want to make sure that you tell the audience before we close down today?
I think it's just to reinforce this notion of focus, which I know I'm cheating because that's like your big word. So I want to, definitely reinforce and pay homage to that. But I do think that's the key, right? I think individually, as teams and as organizations, we have to be striving for focus, because that is the best way and the clearest path to taking back control of the chaos.
Awesome. So tell the listeners, how can they get a hold of you, after the show? Where's the best place to find you?
Two best places: my website, which is clairechandler.net, and LinkedIn is my biggest social media hangout. So come find me on LinkedIn and say hello.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Claire.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you all for being here. You know that it's chaotic, and you know that you are part of the problem. We all know it. I'm not saying you. For every finger I point at you guys, I'm pointing two back at myself. But it's something that we have to pay attention to every single day, to be intentional, to be focused on the things that matter most. So, today we talked about a lot of great ways as leaders in the organization that you can be conscious of that, things that you can do as an individual. So it's up to you to take your little bite out of chaos, and help the organization to see where they can do more for other people. How can you support your team to do more to block out that chaos and block out the noise and the distractors? So thanks for being here. My name is Penny Zanker. This is Take Back Time, and we'll see you in the next episode.